Hey, Boy Manning here, Noah Dalzell alongside TD Garden. Celtics escape their sloppiest game of the year, frankly, 120-119. Almost blow it with a 5-second violation. 2 Jason Tatum misses at the free throw line. And plays earlier, Derek White just dropping an inbounds, out of bounds. They shoot below 30% from 3 in this game. But CJ McCollum misses a last-second floater, and that's what gives them the win in this one. So a positive outlook overall from the Celtics, that they're able to hustle their way to a win, and I'll give them credit for 18 offensive rebounds in this one, including Jason Tatum missing a layup in transition, grabbing it back and dunking, and what ended up being the difference in this game, more or less. So I don't like the way they played in this game, but there are a couple positives to pull from it. We'll do 2 up, 2 down from this one. And Jason Tatum, aside from those late misses, fantastic. And I will give him credit for chasing down that miss, scoring 38 in this one. And this is what I want to see from him. 30 shots, 14 to 30 in this game. Super aggressive when the threes weren't falling. He went to the mid-range for an and one. He went inside a bunch. Some great cutting finishes in this game. The team's not playing great right now, but Tatum is. And that's why I want to see him take over, as we've discussed.
Yeah, I'll just say I thought that they actually played really hard in this game, and I wasn't surprised that that was the message from Joe Mazzulla and Tatum and everybody else who spoke. I just felt like their effort wasn't getting rewarded. I mean, Derek White came out from the gate and just had some great energy. Like, I would say their energy tonight was a plus. And a couple of times, like, guys almost got a steal or, basically got a loose ball and then bounced that off, that uncharacteristic play with Derek White too. So a lot of stuff that just kind of the ball didn't bounce their way. And I think against an elite team, you're not going to get away with it. And they almost didn't get away with it here. It was almost one mistake too many. I was honestly stunned that the Pelicans didn't end up taking away that game, because it felt like all the momentum was on their side by the end there. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're playing an NBA team, and you're playing a team with multiple guys that got really hot. Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum struggled, but you have to take these wins for what they are. And I think especially when you're in a stretch where you're losing so many games, like any win matters.
We mentioned the one mistake too many. I don't know what happened there with White. Didn't get to talk to him after the game. 1 of 6. They could have used the timeout there, right? On the last inbounds play.
He called the timeout. I rewatched this a couple of times. He looked like he called it like right at 5 seconds, maybe a little bit before. But it wasn't like, I think once you get to that point where you're pretty much at 5 seconds, the refs are not going to give you, they already ignore timeout calls late games all the time, whether because they don't hear them or they don't want to call them. So it was a tough spot. I felt like he had a window to pass the ball a couple times there, but obviously you don't want to throw the ball away, and then it's a live ball turnover and they're going to go
and then the other mistake, bizarre, strangest play of the year, where he just drops the inbound in the backcourt and it falls out of bounds.
And that's what I'm saying. It can suck to watch, and it can suck to be out there. And Al Horford said he was stressed just being a part of this game. But at the end of the day, overcoming those types of performances is more impressive than winning a game when everything goes wrong. When everything goes right for you. Like those games happen all the time, where it's like the ball is bouncing in your direction. This was like the definition of the ball was not bouncing in their favor.
They need White to be, their third scorer. Sometimes their second scorer, though. And in this game, missing in action a little bit, whether mentally or just out of the flow of the offense. Only 6 shots, as we mentioned there. So I will put him as a down from this one, though. Kristaps Porzingis pretty firmly and up. He had a weird play early in this game, too, where he's just tapping the ball around and finally went down. And he was one of the few guys who was able to get shots to go down consistently in this one. Working his way back. He said after the game that he still feels like his re-entry into the lineup, and it was -10, that starting group going into this game, net rating-wise, with him back in there. That's throwing them off a little bit, and he feels like he's making progress with each and every game here. I do think there's a discussion to maybe moving him to the second lineup.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I think, honestly, Al Horford in the starting lineup is just a better fit for this group. He has never excelled. Yeah, he's also just, in the last year and a half, he has been so much better when he starts. And luckily unfortunately, or whatever it is, like, he has started a lot of games because there's almost always somebody out. But when you get in a groove where this is their starting 5 and he's off the bench, he's just not as impactful off the bench. And I think Porzingis, we have a limited sample size from the finals.
That puts Brown and Jalen together, too, if he was to come off the bench. More often, I'd say.
Yeah, I would love them to see them try it. I think if there's a star out there that would be okay with it, it's Porzingis. It's probably not going to happen. But I mentioned it a couple of times on press row today that I feel like Porzingis coming off the bench could do this team a lot of good. And if nothing else, like their starts have been bad. So like just change something. Not that it's his fault, but this current group just doesn't have it right now. We'll see. Maybe they'll wait a little bit. And if the bad starts persist, then they mix it up.
I do like how he's playing. And that could get some Porzingis Kata lineups going to the second unit, Porzingis Cornet. I think mixing it up is just something they need to do right now. And then one more down before we get out of here, Jalen. It is time to start talking about his struggles a little more, I think. He has his worst effective field goal percentage since his rookie year this season. In the second quarter there, he does such a great job mashing that deep bench lineup for the Pelicans. And then, they bring Zion back out there and he strips him twice and he's running out, almost threw down a big dunk in transition. Turnover's a problem for Jalen in this one, and not a great shooting game overall for him. He didn't score until the second quarter. And the only thing I can keep going back to is the fact that he's coming out in first quarters now in favor of Tatum, and it's working for Tatum. But they got to figure out how to make better use of Brown, and I don't know how they can do it other than him just getting back to his efficiency from either three or the mid-range as we saw from last year.
Yeah, I think before this game he was down to like 31% from three on the season, and so that's not a good figure. And obviously part of his game is being a three-level scorer, and I think this season he hasn't really had that level, and that's important to him. And again, I'm not gonna overreact to this first half of the season, because in the same way that you can look at Tatum's playoffs and Olympics and how he couldn't buy a basket, like this just happens. It's like an extended stretch. But like you said, it's more than just a shooting. I think right now he's just trying to find himself on the floor, and he's not a great player to try to figure it out on the fly. Like he's somebody that when he's in a flow state, he's one of the best players in the NBA. And when he's not in a flow state and he's in his head, he really gets in his head. And I think he's talked about that as well, but it's very obvious to anybody how when he's processing the game and he's reliving his mistakes and he's trying to overcompensate, it creates a lot of dangerous situations for the Celtics. And so for me, like we've talked before about this, the Celtics being a machine and how the machine's kind of out of whack right now. He's a big part of that. I think that he just hasn't found himself, and I wouldn't attribute it completely to the first quarter thing, that he's not getting that full 12-minute stretch the way that he did last year. But I also think that could have something to do with it, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit frustrated by that too, because he was coming off one of the best seasons of his career, a Finals MVP, and then this lineup change was made that ultimately was going to hurt him a little bit and benefit Tatum. I mean, we know that stars around the league play that full first quarter, so it's something to keep our eye on for sure. But I do think I've just seen people overreact to his struggles too. So it's important to just remember what kind of player he is, and when he struggles, I think it just compounds in a way that it doesn't necessarily happen for everybody.
I'll give him credit though, better playmaking in
sure.
those second units, and he said that's more of a focus now in his role this year. He might be better suited to focusing on scoring though, so it is a story to watch going into the second half. We're about halfway through the year now with the Celtics. So who have you liked so far this season? Who has disappointed you so far through the start of the year? And we're back here on Friday for Celtics Magic, and we'll have remote coverage of Celtics versus Raptors up in Toronto on Wednesday. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. Celtics escape. Nerve-wracking one and a sloppy game at that. 120-119 over the Pelicans.